Okay, it's time for us to get some briskets up in here. I have been talking this up for a good while, and it's high time that I delivered on my promise. It is Friday night. It is approximately 9 o'clock in the evening. I'm gonna season this bad boy up, and then I am going to season this bad boy up, and then I'm going to let it sit in the fridge for a good chunk of time. 12 hours is what they suggested. It'll probably be closer to 14 by the time I get around to it. And then before I leave, either before I leave or before I cook it, I will soak it in beer. I don't want to soak it in beer now because I'm afraid that'll take away from the what's the word I'm looking for? I'm afraid it'll take away from the flavors that I'm trying to savor right now. And double check my new camera's got a pretty good view. Let me flip that viewfinder around so I can see it. I like to be able to see what I'm doing as I'm working on it so I can know that I have a good view of what's going on here. Pretty much can just see my hands, but that's fine. I need to have a towel closer to me and keep touching things and then walking away for a towel. All right, so they said to really rub the seasonings into this bad boy and then to let him just kind of baste in it for a while. So what I'm going to do first and foremost is garlic salt. Garlic is a first in any recipe that I'm making. Obviously not desserts, but so started out with garlic salt. We're gonna rub that baby in. Get him nice and garlic salty. All right, and then take a towel break. Next up is ground cumin. So cumin was one of the recipes mentioned on Young Sheldon, or one of the seasonings mentioned specifically on Young Sheldon. As I said before, this is going to be my rendition of Meemaw's brisket. I've had brisket mentioned to me now twice in recent memory, and the second time was watching Young Sheldon, and they were talking about Meemaw's magical brisket recipe. And so I was like, okay, well, this is now the second time in recent history someone has spoken to me about brisket. So I am going to make one. And it started this magical journey of trying to figure out what the heck brisket even was, because I've never seen it. Oh, I did buy garlic powder. Whew, I guess I don't really need it now. Why not? But anyway, I'd never really seen it when I just go to buy meats. I don't see brisket just chilling out, but I guess I was looking in the wrong places. I went to the butcher counter of this new grocery store that I like, and the butcher counter said that they could make me a brisket, or cut me one, I guess. I was like, that's cool, I'll take that. And so the butcher was out, and so the guy had him call me when my brisket was ready. Well, he called me and said that they don't actually have brisket available at their location. And I was kind of like, well, that's a whole bunch of hogwash. And so I went to my more usual grocery store and asked them for brisket, and not only did they have it, but it was just chilling out in the meat section with all the meats. And I was like, so this thing ain't even that special. And so when I was gonna get one custom cut, I was looking for a 3-pounder, and then when I went over there, the smallest I could find was a 4-pounder. Not that I necessarily wanted a smaller piece of meat. What is this that I'm just going ham on right now? Paprika. But it's not that I wanted the smallest piece of meat so much as I just didn't want to overindulge, obviously. And if I, by some terrible happenstance, mess this up, I don't want to mess up a giant hunk of meat. And so I decided at that point that 4 was fine. And I mean, 4 was ultimately a whole pound heavier than what I'd intended to do initially anyway. And so I think at the end of the day, it all worked out for the best. This little patch right here looks like it needs some extra sauce loving. So I got this here 4-pounding hunk of meat as my new best friend. I need to move my phone away because he's getting covered in seasonings. And then next up is onion powder, by the way. I was supposed to be communicating when I was doing a little bit better so that you guys aren't completely confused by it. But, so yeah, this little 4-pound slab of meat came home with me. There was a 7-pounder there, and boy, you know I was darn ready to get me that 7-pounder, take that sucker home. But I decided against it, namely because as much faith as I have in my own cooking skills, this is the first oven roasted brisket I will be making, and I did not want to ruin that sucker. And so I was like, I don't want to have my first brisket be this 7-pound dud. And so onion powder. So far we've done garlic salt, we've done ground cumin, we've done garlic powder, we've done smoked paprika, we've done onion powder, and the literal texture of this meat at this point has changed. That's how much seasoning is up in this baby right now. They do also call for brown sugar, and I don't know that I'm going to put brown sugar in the meat. I think that I will instead. I'm afraid that whenever I mold this in, I'm afraid that I just am losing a whole bunch of seasoning on my hands. But anyway, instead of, gosh, what was I telling you guys? Instead of brown sugar, mixing it in with the meat, I am going to kind of graze it on top. So right before it goes in the oven, I'll put a sprinkling of there in there, and then when it comes out for its break to do it again, I'll do a second sprinkling. So this is dried mustard, the one that I will be probably the most gentle with. I'm not a huge fan of mustard, but it is one of the things in Meemaw's actual recipe from the show. And so because of that, I want to stay as faithful as possible to the recipe. This stuff is clumpy as all get out. I want to stay as faithful to the recipe as possible. As you can see, I'm not measuring things out as they describe it in the show. Everything has its own measurement. I don't frequent measurements when I'm doing stuff like this. When I'm baking, yes, I'll frequent the measurements and make sure I get them all right and all that fun stuff. But when I'm cooking and I'm just cooking, I'm just throwing something together that looks tasty. I think that's enough mustard for one brisket. Let's get some good stuff going in here. And then just when you think that we've had enough seasoning, I am going to throw some salt and pepper on this bad boy, the classics. And then we're going to flip this sucker over after we get a hefty dose of salt and pepper on him. We're going to flip him over. Ooh, this pepper's going to make me sneeze. I feel like a cartoon character right now. Woo! Yikes! Excuse me. That pepper did make me sneeze. Salt and pepper. Flip this sucker over. And do it all again on the opposite side. And then flip it over again. Wrap it up nice and tight. And let her sit in the fridge and rest. And then I will come back to you guys tomorrow with the second portion of this recipe, which is going to be actually baking the thing and watching it and hoping that it bakes up real tasty and good like. And then my first attempt at brisket will be a success. Can't talk, I'm so excited. I am just massaging the heck out of this meat right now. And like I said, I'm hoping that I am leaving a healthy dose of seasoning on the meat and not on my hands. I do feel like I feel like that meat looks pretty well seasoned at the end of the day. All right, this last little bit is probably the most experimental I will get with this recipe, and it is, I just done messed up, oh well. It is coffee grounds, actually. And I know what you're thinking. You're putting coffee grounds on your meat. What is wrong with you? I have heard from someone before that it's actually good, and the joke brisket from the episode, she had him go and get coffee grounds for it. And so I'm going to try it. This is my ultimate attempt at ultimate brisket. And if it tastes like coffee and ruins the whole thing, then I know. Don't do that next time. I think I will only put the coffee grounds on one side, though. That's my experimental piece. And I don't want to go too crazy with it. And so hopefully, another thing that I'm slightly concerned about is the repeatability of this process, as I am literally just going with the flow and whatever looks and feels right. That's what I put on this thing. So now let's see if we can flip this bad boy over and season his other side. This side doesn't look like it's going to be as receptive to seasoning as the other side was. But we'll do what we can with it. When I bake this side will be laying in beer anyway, so its ability to retain seasoning will be kind of a moot point, because I feel like once the beer hits it, it's gonna all just kind of wash away. But we will try and soak in as much flavor now as we possibly can. And I need to remember the next time I do this to have a fresh towel at my disposal, because this towel wasn't dirty, but it's not exactly fresh either. And ooh, I'm going crazy. I hope I like whatever flavor this is. What is this anyway? Cumin. Yeah, I hope I like some cumin, because I done poured all of it on this brisket. All the cumin that you could eat is on my brisket, my lovely meat. All the cumin that you could eat is on my brisket, that lovely meat. And who would have thought that you all tuned in to listen to me sing about brisket? Oh my goodness. I'm getting sloppy with these seasonings right now. This is the garlic pow. I was honestly probably supposed to go a little lighter on the garlic pow, seeing as how I put garlic salt on here already. It's just gonna be a garlicky massacre. So much for this side not being as seasoned as the other side. I tend to have a heavy hand with seasoning. I shouldn't say I never, but I rarely over-season things to my own taste. Now, to someone else's taste, they might be like, oh my gosh, bruh, you seasoned the heck out that meat. But I'm sitting here like, I want to taste my meat. And I'm doing it right. Because this is what they said. Season this sucker in, massage the heck out of it, and then let it rest in the fridge, soaked in its wonderful flavors, and doing its own thing. I obviously have not been announcing to you guys this time around what I'm putting in here, and I probably should because I'm losing track of where I am. I'm like, what seasoning was that? That was onion powder. Onion powder. I don't know, this thing looks tasty. They said to cook it for an hour and 15 minutes per pound of brisket. Now that seems like an awfully long time. This is a 4-pound hunk of meat, so it could be quite the significant cooking ratio. And there's my dry mustard, just a tad bit of that. Less of that than any other seasoning. Don't want it to be too mustardy. That would be unfortunate. I like all the byproducts of mustard. I don't much care for plain mustard, though. Not a fan of that. And then we are going to top this baby off with the classics salt and pepper. I'll try and go a little less generous with the pepper this time. Problem was, by the time you get to the salt and pepper stage, or at least for me, I couldn't actually see the salt or the pepper because this thing was so seasoned with literally everything else. And so I just went heavy-handed. I was like, we're going to put so much salt and pepper on this sucker that it's just going to taste like salt and pepper is the only thing on here. And there we go. All right, fam. This brisket, she is coming together nicely. Shout out to anybody else out there who's ever made brisket. And if you're like, oh my gosh, what's this man doing to this poor slab of meat? Oops, sorry, it's my first time. And if you've not made brisket before, or you have, and you're excited for what I'm about to experience, say something about that too. I might split this into 2 pieces. This is honestly a 20-minute video right here. And I feel like trying to get people to watch an entire video dedicated to my brisket is gonna be hard enough. And if it's like a hour long, probably gonna be that much harder to get people to watch it. So let's see about flipping the brisket over. I'll have to try and remember now that I put it in on the opposite side. And the brisket itself is just barely wide enough to be the full size of this slab of foil that I set aside for it. So I'm gonna bring some more foil to really bring it in there, pack it in, capture the flavor. All right, this is my 4-pound brisket monstrosity going into the fridge. Let's see, where in the world am I gonna sit this thing? Well, that was actually pretty easy. Voila, the brisket's in the fridge, and we are ready now. It's gonna sit in there and it's gonna rest and marinate and get all its flavors nice and good and ready to go for well over 12 hours. And then I'm going to take it out and I'm going to bake that sucker. And it's going to be an adventurous oven roasted brisket. Thank you for tuning in and watching me season this bad boy. I hope you are half as excited about it as I am. And I will see you part 2 of this video, or later on in this video, whichever I decide to do.